I've been getting into aquascaping and creating these amazing pieces of underwater art for the past couple of years. Over the years I've honed my skills and learned what does and doesn't work well in my tanks. For this video though, I wanted to create something unique, something I'd never done before, at least successfully, in the form of a paludarium. A paludarium means composing above and below water elements consisting of plants, substrate, hardscape, and of course inhabitants to create a beautiful and cohesive ecosystem which looks and functions the same as you might find on a pristine riverbank. To do this I needed a large enough container to hold both the land and the water elements, which was waterproof and had a clear viewing panel. I found this ideal container at Sainsbury's for £12 on clearance, which was a bargain I couldn't resist. Firstly, I played around with the base hardscape. I had available two large pieces of dragon or oco stone which I placed as a kind of border between the land and water area, which would act as the bank and a good way to hold the land substrate back. Dragonstone is very easy to scape and practically scapes itself, but be aware of the direction of the striation on the rock, as rocks placed in non-conformity will look uncohesive, create distraction, and take away from the natural look of the scape I was going for. Imagine a small stream or riverbank where water flows in one direction and erodes rocks and places branches as such. This takes me on to the branches. For this I was using naturally sourced, dry, dead heatherwood, which is great to bring big scapes down to a smaller scale as it has loads of small gnarly twists and turns and will complement the scape perfectly. I placed it in a kind of way that bordered the land and water area to smooth the transition. Once I got an idea of how the overall hardscape would look, I put the substrate in. For the front area, I used a nutrient layer of sea chem fluorite for the plants, topped with some play sand, and finally some lakeland river pebbles to create texture and interest for a more natural look. In the back area, where the emerged plants would grow, I used layers of fluorite and gravel to create a nutrient-rich rooting area which water could move through freely. The surface area would also provide lots of space for beneficial bacteria and microbes to grow. After all this was in place, it was time to bring the scape to life with some plants. I used a range of plants, from ones I bought at the store, such as a peace lily and star plant, to naturally sourced plants, like assorted ferns and moss. I used mainly Anubias and Java fern to plant the water areas, as these plants grow well in immersed, low-light condition and high humidity. As well as this, I found some other plants and added them to see how they would deal with the environment. On a side note, that's what I love about this hobby. It's a constant learning curve, experimenting with different techniques and plants, and learning what works where. What works for some may not work for others. For example, I found this plant next to a local canal and it has taken off and established well, bringing such texture and beauty to the paludarium which might otherwise be lacking. Last but not least, I added the inhabitants. I wanted to stock this tank very lightly, being an ecosystem aquarium. I wasn't planning on doing any maintenance or water changes, other than the occasional plant trim and water top-up. For this reason, I went with a clean-up crew of 1 nerite snail and 6 cherry shrimp. I also added male endler guppies one by one to the aquarium, and I am now up to a total of 3 in the system, which is finely balanced and working perfectly as planned. It's such a joy to watch the fish, snails and shrimp go about their business in the paludarium, and the land feature with overhanging plants really makes this feel like a small slice of nature. One of the main reasons I wanted to make a paludarium style exhibit was because I love observing the fish from above like you do in a back garden pond. It's a different and unique perspective of the animal's behaviour, and it creates a sense of mystery and intrigue, drawing you into the paludarium as the fish ripple the surface of the water in search of food. Having completed the paludarium, I could finally sit back and let it grow in. This is it 1 month later. Okay, so today we're going to be working on updating and maintaining the Paludarium style setup, which I've put in this large vase here. I think it looks really good and the plants have settled in nicely. The water lily at the back has settled in nicely, and there's some new shoots growing on this palm-like looking plant, as well as the immersed and water plants. Some of them have done well, like the Anubias at the back there, and some Anubias have really died off. Like, get those reflections out the way. Like this brown one here has started to die off quite a lot. So what we're going to be working on today is getting those dead plants out, putting a few newer, fresh, live ones in, because I do have more peace lilies to go in here, but the reason I only used one is because I thought it would probably grow a bit faster and fill up that space more, but it hasn't grown that quickly. It's probably been in there for about 2 months now. This is probably 2 months old, this setup. And so we're just going to update it a little bit and give it a bit of a kickstart and get it growing nicely. So yes, that's what we're going to be doing today. Another thing I'm going to be doing is replacing this piece of heatherwood. Although I like the way it looks, I actually think it's too spindly for this setup. And I found a really nice piece which will come down from the very top and sort of arch over the water area, which is much bolder and thicker, and it will just fill that space better and look nicer. This looks a bit too spindly and just like a bit of a fallen twig or something like that, which I don't really like. But yeah, so that's what we're going to be doing today, and I'm going to go and get all the materials we need. I've got the peace lilies outside, and I've got the large piece of heatherwood which I found the other day. It was long dead and it's really dry and hard. Nice to use. I do have a few guppies in this setup, just begging for some food. They're 3 Endler guppies. There's probably about 5 gallons of water in this when it's filled up, with all of the water accounting for the backspace as well, which obviously the guppies can't access, but it provides a really good area for beneficial bacteria to inhabit. If you have a look around the back, it's basically 3 or 4 inches of gravel with plant roots running thick through it, and it's just the perfect natural filter for this setup. There is no filter in it, and it's been doing really well. The fish are thriving. There's no signs of ill health on them. Got a nerite snail in there as well. They really like good water quality, and I've got a breeding colony of shrimp, so I've seen some little ones, which also indicates that this setup is just thriving. So yeah, we're just going to be working on making it look a little bit better. I think it looks lovely, but we'll just make it look as good as possible for our little animal corner, because the other day we've actually set up the drip wall moss terrarium, and that is doing really well. I think it looks amazing. It's probably one of the best projects I've ever done, and it's also one of the simplest and cheapest. If you believe this, everything in this setup, minus the light, which I got as a present, was less than £10. A lot of naturally sourced material, naturally sourced rock, dead heatherwood, moss. All I really used was some aquarium gravel, which really you don't even need to use. You can just use some cheap gravel, and the pump in the back. And I just bought this vase from Sainsbury's for £7, and yeah, so less than £10 I would say that setup cost me and all, and I think it looks like one of my best so far. I love the way it looks, and it just brings a bit more of a symmetrical look to the animal corner, the jungle corner, because yeah, it looks quite similar to the circular shape of the Paludarium. But yeah, I'm really loving the way this all looks, but we'll just get this looking a bit better. I've moved the jungle plants, which are usually around it, out of the way, so we'll put those back when it's all set up nicely. So I'm just using one of these peace lilies that I got from Longacres, and I've turned it into this by just removing the soil from the roots, and then it's ready to go and be planted in immersed conditions with its roots in the water.
You can obviously leave the soil on, like that's what would happen in nature, but you just don't want that soil giving too much nutrients to the water column, which could cause algae growth and things like that. So you just wash it off, and there's plenty of nutrients in the water created by the fish waste for these plants to thrive. So this is what I've managed to come up with. I think it looks a lot cleaner, just thicker, bolder branches coming down. Creates a bit more interest in the back, and also this more densely planted area just makes it look more jungly rather than having little holes that you can see through at the back. Yeah, I'm really pleased with the way this has turned out. I'm just going to fill up the water level up to about here because it's a little bit low right now. I did do a little siphon on the tank, and then it's pretty much finished. Might add some moss into the gravelly areas just to cover the gravel. I feel like that moss could do well there. But yeah, I'm not sure. We'll have to see how that goes. But I think it does look better. The glass is easier to wipe. The twigs are more stable, more sturdy. It's just a bit easier to maintain as well. So yeah, we're going to keep it like this.